They left her waiting outside, not knowing that in 5 minutes, she would fire them all. So begins the story that will make you reflect deeply. Don't forget to comment from which country you are watching. Marta arrived at the law firm's reception. With slow but firm steps, she had a folder under her arm. She had requested a formal appointment in advance. But when she introduced herself, the receptionist didn't even look up. "You have an appointment? There must be a mistake. The interviews are inside, ma'am. We are not looking for cleaning staff," she muttered with disdain while other employees in the background laughed. Marta said nothing, only showing the confirmation on her cell phone. The receptionist glanced over her shoulder and replied sharply, "Let the wretch wait outside." Outside, as she settled onto a wooden bench in the waiting room, several employees walked by, looking at her and whispering. One even said out loud, "And what is she doing here dressed like a lawyer? She must have gotten lost on her way to the soup kitchen." Marta clutched the folder to her chest and kept her gaze lowered. Inside, she was boiling with indignation, but her face showed an unsettling calm. No one really knew who she was or why she had come. They just assumed she was an old woman who was out of place. And so, amidst whispers and taunts, she was ignored as if she didn't exist. A young assistant with an air of superiority approached Marta after an hour and, without looking her in the eye, said, "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We don't have time for unscheduled visits." Marta again showed the appointment confirmation, but the young woman didn't bother to read it. "It must be a system error. Only important people come in here, not people like you." Before she could respond, a security guard was called by the receptionist. "Please, escort her to the exit. We don't want a scene." When the guard approached, he was visibly uncomfortable, but he followed the order. He gently took Marta's arm to guide her, but she stood her ground. "Are you really going to remove me like this, without even checking who I am?" The guard hesitated for a moment, but the pressure from the group was stronger. One of the senior lawyers, a blonde woman with an authoritarian voice, pointed directly at Marta and shouted, "Get her out of here. She's bothering the clients. Tell her to get lost now." The group behind her burst into laughter, not knowing that in a few minutes their laughter would turn into pleas. Marta looked each one of them in the eye before standing up, not with anger, but with the disquieting calm. As she was escorted to the door, several employees filmed her with their cell phones, mocking her openly. "This is going in the WhatsApp group. The lady of the day," one of them said, laughing. The injustice, the humiliation, the contempt for her appearance, it had all piled up in a matter of minutes. Marta gripped her folder tighter. She knew this place was rotten to the core, and she also knew she had the power to rip it out by the roots. At that very moment, in the conference room down the hall, the firm's general counsel was waiting for a woman named Marta Olivo, a silent investor who had acquired 51% of the firm in a recent merger. No one in the office knew because the announcement was to be made in person that morning. And as they mocked her outside, the clock struck exactly 11:55 in the morning. There were 5 minutes left until everything would change, but still, no one suspected a thing. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on what you think. Marta, her arm still held by the guard, stopped just in front of the main door. "Are you sure you want to leave, ma'am?" he asked in a low voice. She nodded with a slight smile, as if she knew something the others didn't. At that moment, the receptionist's phone rang. When she answered, her face changed completely. She went pale, stammered something incomprehensible, and then shouted, "Wait, come back. Marta Olivo, she's..." But it was too late. Everyone heard. Everyone turned around, their expressions shifting from contempt to fear in a matter of seconds. The senior partner came running from the boardroom, pushing aside anyone in his way. "Where is Marta Olivo? Don't let her leave." But she was already in the elevator, and as the doors closed, her steady gaze on those who had been laughing just minutes before made it clear that the shame had only just begun. The elevator descended slowly, but every second felt like an eternity. Behind her, she could hear desperate shouts and contradictory orders. Several employees ran from one side to the other, trying to stop her, as if, having cruelly thrown her out, they now feared the consequences, and they were right to. On the floor below, the personal driver who had brought her to the building was already waiting with the door of the official vehicle open, the same one bearing the logo of the newly merged firm, now owned by Marta Olivo. Though her heart ached from the humiliation, she knew the time to act had arrived, not with rage, but with the authority of someone who doesn't need to shout to be respected. Meanwhile, in the main office, panic had erupted. The senior partner, Sael Herrera, was red with rage. How is it possible that no one knew who she was? Who was the imbecile who denied her entry? No one answered. The receptionist trembled as she held the confirmation sheet she herself had ignored hours earlier. The same people who had mocked her now stared at the floor, as if that could hide their shame. "And you?" Sael shouted, pointing at the lawyer who had called her flea-bitten. "Have you gone mad? She's the new majority partner." The woman couldn't speak. For the first time, she understood that her contempt would have a price. Marta did not return immediately. She let the silence and uncertainty do their work. For 2 full hours, the entire office was a hotbed of speculation, fear, and frantic calls to the board. Several employees tried to delete the videos they had recorded. Others rehearsed apologies in front of the bathroom mirror, but there was no turning back. During that time, Marta met with the directors of the financial group that backed her, presented the conduct report she had compiled with private investigators, and formally requested a complete ethical audit of the staff. At 3:05 in the afternoon, she entered again, this time through the main door. Her driver cleared the way, followed by a team of lawyers carrying thick folders and wearing implacable expressions. Marta walked with a firm stride, not looking from side to side, as if she knew everyone was already condemned by their actions. In the boardroom, the atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. When she began to speak, there were no preambles. "I am not here for you to ask my forgiveness. I am here to correct what you refuse to see, the rotten way you treat those you consider inferior." In the following minutes, one by one, names began to fall from her lips. The receptionist, the lawyer who recorded the video, the supervisor who ordered me to be escorted out, and you, she said, looking directly at the blonde woman, who thought you had the power to decide who is worthy and who is not. Faces changed color as Marta handed the documents to her lawyers. "You will be removed from your positions immediately. To avoid lawsuits, accept the compensation you are offered, but you will never set foot in this firm again." No one dared to speak. The power, the real power, was now on the side of the woman they had thrown out as if she were worthless. The tension transformed into absolute silence. Marta took a seat at the head of the table and reviewed the firm's documents. From this day forward, the treatment of every client, every visitor, and every colleague will be watched under a microscope. I don't want people with titles and expensive suits. I want people with humanity, with respect. A young intern, who had witnessed everything without participating, timidly raised his hand. "Mrs. Marta, I'm sorry. I saw you from the beginning, and although I didn't say anything, I thought it was unfair, but I was afraid to speak up." Marta looked at him with compassion. Silence is also a form of complicity, but if you are willing to never be silent again, you will have a real opportunity here. In the following days, the news spread throughout the city. Local media spoke of the new partner's silent revenge, and many older people who had once been underestimated felt inspired by her story. Marta received hundreds of letters of thanks. Even former employees who had resigned due to mistreatment offered her their support. The law firm, once feared for its arrogance, began to transform from within. And although the process was difficult, the change was evident, brought about not by force, but by the dignity she had brought with her. Marta never sought revenge. What she did was justice. She didn't scream, she didn't humiliate, nor did she pay them back in their own coin. She simply let the truth speak for itself. Those who had called her flea-bitten learned that respect is not measured by clothes, age, or appearance, and that a true leader doesn't need to impose their will with shouts, but with actions. The firm's new motto, hung at the entrance, said, "It all. Never underestimate the one who arrives in silence, for they may be the one who has come to set things in order." you never know who is behind the mask. Appearances can be deceiving, but respect and dignity must always be non-negotiable.